Hello, Burwood. It's been a while since I've been here as we continue our teaching series, Jesus in the Digital Age. I know for most of you, you've heard by now that Tiffany and I would be moving back to the States, and it's quite difficult continuing our journey together, thinking that we're leaving at the same time. But as I said previously, I do believe that God has some amazing things in mind and in store for Bearwood Church. And I will be looking from afar and praying for our community as we think of what we can do next to continue our mission here in Melbourne. Let's dig in to this concept that we've been studying together, Jesus in the digital age. Our main thought and our main idea has been, how do we continue our lives as Christians in a world that now primarily works virtually? It's been like that for a while, but since this pandemic occurred, it seems that a lot of our interactions and connections are happening mainly through the digital platform. And so how do we continue to live out our walk in that space? You see, what we've been able to do in the past is we've been able to take our Christianity, package it together, our getting together, our eating together, our praying together, our studying together, and pack it neatly in a building. We've been able to say, this is where my Christianity is explored freely, and outside in the world, I try my best to kind of fit in to everyone else. And so a lot of my Christian practices, my praying, my worshiping, my teaching, my learning, my studying has happened primarily in the building. But now we find ourselves out of the building. We've been talking about this idea that the church has to move out, and what the pandemic has done is it's forced us out, and now we're out. Now our lives are 24/7. Everything has now been jam-packed together in one space. It's no longer, here's my church space, here's my work space, here's my family space. For many of us, your work space is your family space, and your church space is in the same place because you're doing all of that on Zoom. And so now everything is in one space, and now we have to struggle with our Christian ideologies and our values and the tension between where do I live out those spaces. Instead of living them out in compartments, we're now called, and have been called for a while, but now forced to actually face it in the day-to-day. And this is where I believe these next two ideas, these next two lessons that we're going to explore together, this is where I believe it really comes in handy, because we're going to explore Matthew 5. That right there in Matthew chapter 5, Jesus is going through what I would call kingdom ethics, kingdom values. He's going through, what does it mean to live out life in the kingdom of God? In fact, Matthew, around chapter 4, has basically been saying that Jesus has been going around teaching the power of the kingdom of God, and he's been healing in the power of the kingdom of God. What Matthew has been trying to explain is that Jesus has been speaking the words of the kingdom and living out the words of the kingdom. Going from city to city doing that same thing. So in Matthew 5, you see the teachings, and later on, as you go to Matthew 6, Matthew 7, you continue, Matthew 8, comes stories of healings and stories of the manifestation of the power of the kingdom of God. So Matthew 5 begins the teaching part, but it's not teachings that you can say that Jesus simply did in one time. I believe Matthew is compiling a bunch of words of Jesus. Here's what his messages would typically look like, and he hyper-focuses on one moment, one time, where Jesus was going through and the crowds were following him, and he gets up on the mountain and he starts speaking the kingdom of God and what it's like. That's where we jump in. Matthew chapter 5. Let's start at verse 1. One day, as he saw the crowds gathering, Jesus went up on the mountainside and sat down. His disciples gathered around him, and he began to teach them. Before we go any further, I need you to understand who's here, okay? So Jesus watches crowds following. That means if you're looking at Matthew 4, you're seeing that Jesus is going from city to city to city. He's going around teaching, preaching, manifesting God's power. He'll teach here, and then he'll show what the power of the kingdom of God is. He'll talk about the kingdom of God is like a great pearl, and it's something so amazing, a treasure so great that when you find it, you hide it back in so that no one else can tell. And then he goes into a real life situation of someone who is sick and someone who is in need, and he heals them. And so people are going, wow, what is this amazing thing? And he says, this is what the kingdom of God is like. So he's going from place to place to place. And of course, anyone who's like that, anyone who's magnetic like that, anyone who's creating life change instantly like that, has people following him. And so he's going, and he sees these people following. And if we were Jesus and we see this huge crowd, we would sit down and go, okay, now we're going to start a new movement, and we would name it something. We would brand it something. We'd say, now here's our big campaign. But you don't see Jesus doing that. Jesus, in fact, sees the crowd, looks at how many people are following, and he sits down, and he says, okay, now let me teach you what you're actually into. In other words, here's your chance to back out. Let me help you understand what's happening here. And he says he sits down. Now, I need you to understand that when a rabbi would sit down, that means serious teaching is about to take place. Yeah. Teaching was a serious moment. It was a transformational moment. So when the disciples, the followers of that rabbi, when they recognized that he was into that teaching moment, they recognized that it was a learning moment. And so they sat down at the foot of Jesus. I wonder if some of you are going through a learning moment right now. Tiffany and I have been wondering that. Are we in a transformational moment? Are we in a teaching moment? Is there something God is trying to tell us? Let me put it this way. When it looks like God has sat down and it doesn't seem there's a clear way, there's no clarity as to where to go next. And it seems like the King of Heaven has just taken a seat. Often those are teachable moments. Those are moments we are called to sit down as well, to rest, to be still, and take in what God is saying to us. So the disciples recognize that. And so they come and they sit down. Now you have to understand that the crowd is still there. You see, Jesus sees the crowd and sit down, signaling to the disciples that this is a learning moment. We're no longer moving. We're no longer in motion. This is a time to pause. Okay? And so they've paused. But the crowd is still there. And so in this moment, in this context, there are people who've kind of committed to following Jesus there, the disciples, and there are people who are just wondering, who are curious, who are exploring. And that might be you. Some of you watching have committed to following Jesus, have committed to the journey, and there are those of you who are watching who are just wondering, just curious about what this church is about, curious about what this community looks like. Maybe you just stumbled onto this video and you're just wondering about this Jesus movement. And so I invite both of you to enter into this situation, both the curious and the committed. This is who Jesus is talking to. So Matthew 5, he continues in verse 3. He says, God blesses, or another version would say, happy are those. God blesses those who are poor. Okay? This is completely contrary to anything they know. And in fact, many of us would not consider being poor a blessing. Okay, but here is God again telling us that the kingdom of God is completely unlike our world. that God's kingdom is in fact upside down. That what you and I call cursed is what the kingdom of God calls blessed. Why? It says God blesses those who realize their need for him. That those who lack are yearning for something more. But when we are satisfied, we're no longer chasing after. And so here is Jesus saying that God's kingdom, that the government of God, that's what it means, kingdom of God, the government of God. In other words, the people God will have rulership over. Oh, let me put it this way. Where God's paradise exists, it exists for those who are in need. That those who are not in need, those who are not spiritually destitute, that's the word, the poor word there. It's not just simply having lack of, but someone who is begging for. Ooh, that's good. I'm gonna let you just hold on, just listen to that a little bit. Just wait, listen. Yeah. It's not just about those who are poor, it's those who are in need of. So Jesus, in this age, in this world that we live in, I need you to understand that in a world where we have so much and everything is given to us at any time, in the just a snap of our fingers, we can order something online. We can get this or get that. We can get satisfaction from anything that we desire. We want this, we want this, we want that. We can get it. In a world of consumerism, Jesus is saying, you will see me more clearly when you identify your need for me. That's when you are blessed. So here we have Jesus speaking to this crowd, to this group of onlookers and followers. And here he says, God bless those who are poor and realize their need for him. But he continues, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. The kingdom of heaven is theirs. The kingdom of heaven, the paradise of God, the place where God rules, the place where goodness rules. You see, when I say God rules, a lot of you might not fully understand what I'm saying is because in your mind, when you hear God rules, you're thinking authority rules, you're thinking reign rules. But when I say God rules, when Jesus talks about the kingdom of God ruling, he's talking about love rules. The place where there is no dying, the place where there is no mourning, the place where there is no hatred, the place where there is no division, the place where there is finally justice, the place where there is finally peace, the place where joy abounds. He's saying those who recognize his need for God will have that place. That place will come falling down into their lives. That place will lavish them presently in the present moment. That place will come flowing down. He continues with what that place is about and who you are when you're in that place. Who do you become as citizens of God's kingdom? He says, God blesses those who mourn. You might mourn now, but even in this very present moment, God's favor is on you. Why? For they will be comforted. Here's this idea that theologians talk about all the time, the already but not yet, that God's kingdom exists right now, right here, that God's way of living and God's way of doing things, that the way love operates exists right now in this world, but the fullness of it is coming later. The fullness of it is coming in a future time. There is this already, and then there's this not yet. And so you see, God blesses those who mourn already, but not yet. They will be comforted. God blesses those who are humble, finds favor, but they will inherit the whole earth. I hope you understand that everything Jesus is talking about is what the kingdom of God is like and what the kingdom of God will be. He's saying that the kingdom of God is for those who recognize their need. It is for those who mourn and are looking for comfort. God's way, God's presence, where God abides, who Jesus is it allows us to inherit the whole earth, that this whole planet will one day finally be under the power of love, the power of joy, the power of peace, that this whole planet will one day, watch this, God blesses those who hunger and thirst for justice. One day the whole earth will be full of justice. One day, for they will be satisfied. We will finally find a place. We will finally have a place where there is justice. And he's trying to explain what God's kingdom is like. He says, God blesses those who are merciful, for they will be shown mercy. These are things we yearn for. And just as this is what the kingdom of God is like. You see, these characteristics are not for one individual. This is not about those who are merciful will get this, and those who yearn for justice will get this, and those who are poor will be this. It's saying everyone that's part of God's kingdom are those who recognize his need for them, and as a result, this is who they become. They become people of mercy. They become people of peace. They become people who yearn for justice. God blesses those who hunger and thirst for justice. They will be satisfied. The whole earth, the kingdom of God, the whole earth will one day be full of God's justice, and they will be satisfied. God blesses those who are merciful, for they will be shown mercy. God blesses those whose hearts are pure, for they will see God. God blesses those who work for peace, for they will see God. God blesses those who work for peace, for they will see God. They will be called children of God. Those who yearn for God's peace, peacemakers. Verse 10 says this, God blesses those who are persecuted for doing right, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. So here it is. God blesses those who are poor and realize their need for him. The kingdom of heaven is theirs. God blesses those who are persecuted for doing right. The kingdom of heaven is theirs. So here it is. In the midst of a world that looks drastically different than the way God desired it, you will be blessed. You will find favor from God when you recognize your need for him. And as a result of that need for him, you will start living and yearning for the characteristics of God's kingdom, even in the midst of this digital age. And as a result of wanting what God yearns for, you will be persecuted. That is, other people will feel uncomfortable around you because your very presence will be an annoyance for the way they live life. The desire to always find peace in the midst of conflict. The desire to always have justice in the midst of injustice. The desire to constantly be a person of mercy when people are extremely unmerciful. The desire to yearn for God when everyone is yearning for themselves will cause other people to feel awkward around you, and therefore they might say all sorts of evil about you. Verse 11 says, God blesses those people. God blesses you when people mock you. Oh, wait. Does this sound familiar? That the way you live life, because of your focus and because of your desire to live life a certain way, the values of love and joy and peace that you want to keep and uphold, people will mock you, people will persecute you, people will lie about you, and say all sorts of evil things against you because you are my followers. Jesus saying, here, crowd is coming. And Jesus goes, hey, guess what? If you keep on following this kingdom thing, if you keep on following after me, this is the kind of person you will become. You will be blessed. And what does that blessing will look like? That blessing will be you'll become more merciful. You'll become more peaceful. You will yearn for justice in the midst of injustice. You will seek and fight for love. You will try your best to be humble even in the midst of agitation. This is the kind of person you'll be. And he says, here's what you should be ready for. Verse 12, be happy about it. People are persecuting you. People are saying all sorts of evil about you. People are mocking you. So I know we've struggled. Some people feel I can't claim Christianity. I can't say I'm Christian because it's not right. It doesn't look good. In our culture we're very secular, so we don't really show what we believe in. And look, the crazy thing is Jesus is saying there's nowhere it says God blesses those who preach Christianity. It's talking about God blesses those who live kingdom principles. God blesses those who live kingdom principles. You are blessed. You are favored. And because you are favored, you will be a misfit, and therefore you'll be mocked. And Jesus says, just be happy about it. Be very glad, for a great reward awaits you in heaven. Again, this already, but not yet. And remember, the ancient prophets were persecuted in the same way. You're not the first, and you won't be the last that's mocked for your beliefs and for what you stand for. But here goes, and we're wrapping up right here. Listen, this is what Jesus was getting to. As the onlookers and the committed, the followers, he was trying to get them to understand that the danger of continuing to follow after me, watching miracle after miracle. There's some of you in your own life that God has acted over and over and over again, okay? He's shown you crazy, amazing things happen in your life, okay? Watch this. The danger of continuing to follow his teachings, listening in on what the kingdom of the God is like, and not doing anything about it. The danger of belief without any change in behavior is that you will lose your power. He says, you, verse 13, are the salt of the earth. He stopped the present already and the not yet. He just, this is who you are. While you're sitting there listening to me, whether you're onlooker or follower, whether you believe in God or not, you are the flavor of the earth. Because my image is inside of you, because when I created you with purpose, because I gave you value, because I breathed into you, you are the salt of the earth. You are the salt of the earth. But what good is salt if it has lost its flavor? Can you make it salty again? It will be thrown out and trampled underfoot as worthless. Don't miss your purpose. Don't miss your function. Whether you're in the building or online, whether you're on Zoom or in a text message group, whether you're just browsing through, wherever you are, don't forget, you are the salt of the earth. That is, you are the very thing that gives the earth flavor. You are salt, therefore you heal. Your role on the earth is to provide healing. You are salt, therefore you preserve. You keep safe those around you. You are the salt of the earth. It is through you all of this goodness of the kingdom of God will flow through. In other words, it is through you I will be the church. It is through you I will act on this earth. And it is through you I will live out the kingdom of God. You are the salt of the earth. You are the very agent of God's kingdom through which I will act in the world. And that truth is not only when I'm on the supermarket, but it's also when I'm on Facebook. It's not only when I'm in the car driving, it's also when I'm on Instagram. It's not only when I'm just living at my house, it's also who I am online. You are the salt of the earth. It is through you God expects to do great things. What would happen? What would the world look like if we lived out this deep need for God, not only in person, but also online?